Today, we will be talking about why Nicholas Cruz is innocent as charged for the shooting with multiple fatalities at the high school in Parkland, Florida in February, about 3 months ago of 2018. I'm Eric Lindell, and I'm glad you're joining us today. We'll start by looking at some of the background for this for this set of accusations against the young Nicholas, which includes, well, let's start with the arrest. There are at least 3 distinct accounts of Nicholas's arrest, and they are all different to the extent that if one of them is accurate, the other 2 must be inaccurate. There's the officer's verbal report where he said that Cruz was taken in without incident by apparently just him, just that one officer. Now there's footage of the arrest which shows 2 officers doing the arresting, and in this footage it's especially peculiar how the young Nicholas appears to be completely out cold, limp as a noodle, as one viewer described it. And it's very strange how, even though the guy is clearly unconscious, with his limbs flapping when they try to cuff him, there's still an officer nervously holding training the gun on him, like he said, freeze, and the other officer running in from the side with handcuffs as if there's not a second to lose lest the suspect, decide to run off or something like this. It's all theater. It's all theater. You won't know that from the mainstream media, but if you check out enough, non-traditional sources of information, the picture becomes very clear very quickly. So those are 2 accounts that are incompatible with one another. The third one is a photograph of the arrest where Nicholas is lying on the ground. There's 2 officers arresting him. His hands are behind his back. His eyes are wide open. He is fully alert, facing the camera. And peculiarly, his underwear is very visible. It's pulled way up past his waist. His pants are hanging low on his waist, so you see like several inches all around of this blue turquoise-ish underwear, which is very strange. And hopefully we will be talking about possible reasons that they took such a theatrical shot inclusive of his underwear. And one viewer even said it looked like he's wearing makeup. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me, though I can't vouch for it. Okay, now let's look at the witnesses. For one, there was a classmate named Alexa who knew him since middle school and who even joked with him during the evacuation of the school to say she's surprised it wasn't him. And he just gave her a big, huh? And the journalist who was interviewing Alexa to elicit this account of things said, really? I mean, they were really communicating on a common wavelength, and I emphasize that because so many of the witnesses to these events sound wishy-washy. They sound loosey-goosey, they sound uncertain, they sound timid, they sound reluctant, they're holding back, there's a hesitation. Okay, Alexa didn't have any of those qualities. She was spot on, saying directly, very respectfully, exactly what she saw and didn't see and what she heard and didn't hear. Now, the fact that such a witness would be excluded for the most part from the mainstream media is at best very peculiar and at worst very suspicious. So let's look at the next witness, which was a teacher who claims to have actually seen the shooter in the process of shooting. She says that this guy was in full military or law enforcement garb from head to toe, with protective attire, while he's firing down the hallway. Now, saliently, she didn't say she saw anything hit, because in the parlance of the federal alphabet agencies who call these incidents school plays, what was being fired was more than likely called simunition. It's made of some weird thing like bee pollen and or beeswax and laundry detergent. In any case, it stings like hell if you get hit by it, but that's about all it does. And we'll be talking more about the AR-15 ammo very shortly, because I'm sure that stings like hell if it just sort of grazes your skin. But like I say, we'll get to that. Now, there was some type of officer, some type of officialdom fitting the exact description provided by the teacher, who was being whisked away from the school on that day. This was caught by, I think somebody said a helicopter. Anyway, I'm going to provide the link to that. I'm going to provide a link to all of these things. And if I knew what I was doing as far as video editing, I would include them in the video. But unfortunately, I just don't have what it takes to make a proper video. But that's okay. All the information will be there. So that's the teacher. And there were several other students who said that there were other shooters. So we have, at the very least, the fact that Nicholas did not act alone. And we have from, the witness account by Alexa, who, again, was speaking to him while there was shooting going on in some other part of the building, according to what she heard, and according to what she was hearing at the time, and while they were evacuating. So it looks a little bit like Nicholas may not have been a shooter at all, but there are multiple accounts suggesting there were second shooters, that Nicholas did not act alone, and there's also the suggestion that he did not participate in the shooting at all. If he had, why would they have to arrest him 3 times? That doesn't happen in this world, okay? If somebody committed a crime and you go out and arrest him, you arrest him once. Okay, there's not like a photograph showing one arrest, video footage showing another arrest, and then a policeman's oral report depicting yet another arrest. That should go without saying, and, well, I guess it does go without saying. So let's look at a little bit more evidence. Evidence that perhaps nobody was shot, because, as I say, it was simunition that was being fired. There is the peculiar case of Nicholas Cruz, who was a freshman at that school, and who, according to the published account, was shot in the ankle on the 3rd floor, and then he ran down 3 flights of stairs and identified not only the shooter, but also the weapon being used by the shooter. And then he's shown in the hospital with a crater where his ankle is supposed to be, and he's shown with his leg bandaged up and a foot that is perfectly monochromatic. There is no chromatic variation whatsoever in his foot. There is no motion whatsoever in his toes. They are perfectly still. And most saliently of all, he has no toenails. Now, does somebody please want to explain to me how this is possible? Does the AR-15 have some kind of magical toenail removing property? Okay, especially since the following week, the same guy is depicted with all of his toenails fully restored in their original glory. Somebody explain this, okay, because I'm confused as hell. Unless, of course, the official narrative is in error, which maybe it is. You never know. Stranger things have been known to happen. Okay, there were anywhere from about half a dozen people who were shot by the AR-15, which, by the way, has a muzzle velocity of no less than 4 times the speed of sound, and which, upon entry, is known to it either yawns or tumbles and produces exit wounds up to the size of a softball. Most of these people who got hit should have died. Okay, somehow 6 of them, with a number of bullet wounds ranging from about 1 to 6, not only survived, but made virtually miraculous recoveries, taking only, like a couple of weeks. There's a lot of explaining to do here. Okay, it's not plausible. There are some people who say that all of the medical funds, to reimburse for the bills and everything, was really to make sure that the people involved remain consistent with the official narrative, because that's obviously of vital importance in these cases. You can't have everybody, like half the people tell the truth and half the people, go along with some other story. It gets pretty messy, and come to think of it, it's pretty messy as it is, but not as messy as if people were not persuaded to be silent about certain incongruous phenomena associated with this incident. Then we have multiple witnesses attesting to the existence of a drill that very day. How about that? An active shooter drill that very day. What a coincidence. Wasn't there something like that at Sandy Hook, something along those lines? Same day, Las Vegas. I don't know. I lose track sometimes, but these scenarios bear a striking similarity to one another, and injuries that don't look like injuries is one of them. Drills occurring the same day or even at the same time is another one. And there were people who at the time of the shooting thought it was a drill. There is footage of drill preparations, including somebody applying, like a student applying makeup to her face to simulate the appearance of a bullet wound. I'm not sure how that goes, a bullet wound to the face and it leaves like a kind of a round red thing, but whatever. I'm sure it looks more like one than if you don't put any makeup there at all. So, God bless them. They're doing their active shooter drills conscientiously so that, God forbid, should one ever happen, and you never know, it always could happen sometime. They will be prepared. And I am, of course, very grateful for that, and I'm sure that you are too. So, one more thing we want to talk about is the destruction of evidence. Why in God's name do they have to destroy the building, demolish the building, before some independent investigator is sent in there to look for a bullet hole, or evidence of some blood? This is the other thing that's very suspicious about this. Where the hell are the corpses? If there were 17 fatalities in a mass shooting, for God's sakes, produce some goddamn corpses. That must be God sending me a message. I apologize for my indiscretion. Okay, but show me some goddamn corpses if you want me to believe there was a mass shooting with multiple fatalities. I put this on Facebook. I lost almost every friend I have because they really don't like being reminded that they should hold out to see some dead bodies before buying into this bogus shenanigan about 17 fatalities. Okay, they should also want to see an inspection of the school, again for bullet holes, and an inspection for biological contaminants, aka blood, which there should be rivers of the stuff going on, but there weren't. There was also a request by law enforcement that the students not take out their phones. What could they possibly have been afraid of? So, okay, now the last thing we want to talk about is a characteristic that is very common to a lot of these situations, and that is foreknowledge. None other than David Hogg himself, who was supposedly interviewing shooting survivors hiding in a closet while the shooting was still happening, announces the time of the interview in his own voice as part of the video. And what do you know? The video was being shot almost 5 hours before the shooting occurred. Okay, does this strike you as remotely similar to anything else you've ever heard of? What it reminds me of is Tower 7 of the World Trade Center that was standing in the background as the anchor person announced that it had fallen. And it was not going to fall for another half an hour. So, as if our intelligence were not being sufficiently insulted by, this whole bogus shenanigan, there's one more thing to add insult to injury. And that one thing is laughter. There was a witness, a student. There were two of them, two young women being interviewed, right after the incident. And I have to say, this person I have some feeling for, because unlike pretty much anyone else that I saw interviewed, this one appeared to be genuinely traumatized. And of course, the shooting doesn't have to be real to be traumatized. It's sufficient if you think it's real. So she is giving, answering a lot of questions and giving her account of things. And toward the end of the interview, she's recounting her experience hiding in a classroom as the shooters, and I'm pretty sure she uses the plural, as the shooters run down the hallway, presumably toward the exit. And what do you suppose she heard as they were running by? She heard laughter. Why laughter? Well, hopefully we can understand why they might have been laughing. Laughter is, of course, very inappropriate during an actual shooting, but perhaps an understandable consequence of human nature during a drill that has been extended into a false flag. And then the last thing about laughter involves Phil Mudd, who was, he's some kind of commentator on TV, used to work for the FBI, and he is talking about how a child of God has been blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he's crying, but there's no tears, which is another feature that you always have, the crying without the tears in these things. And momentarily, he turns away because he was laughing. You got to check the footage of this out if you haven't seen it already. But if you play it in slow-mo, or better, freeze the frames right before he turns away momentarily, you can see what is unmistakably a big ear-to-ear grin on his face. So you are not just being bamboozled with pathetically and insultingly amateurish evidence, if you can call it that, but you are being further insulted. You are being laughed at for buying into this stuff, if you're one of the few who does that, and maybe you're not. Hopefully you're not. Long story short, poor Nicholas is a 19-year-old, possibly mentally ill. We don't really know, because we just have no idea how accurate the accounts are. But if he wasn't mentally ill before, he may well be now, after what he's gone through. and not just what he's experienced. It's quite certain in the minds of many that he has been chemically lobotomized, and these people have no conscience whatsoever. I'm not sure what they plan to do with him when they're done with him. Are they going to sell him as a pedophile on the international market? I mean, they might as well, for all the crimes they've committed against him and everyone else. But I want to say that Nikolas Cruz is innocent. He did nothing wrong, and he really needs our help. And I'm not sure what form that help would take, but why don't we think about that? Because I would like to help him. So anyway, if you've been watching, I do thank you for your interest, and if you're not watching, well, maybe you can catch us next time. I'm Eric Lindell. Have a nice day.